Please welcome moderators Yvette Cameron and Alan Lepofsky for the Executive Exchange, The Future of Work.
What we're here to talk about this morning is the research theme we call the future of work. And the future of work is the intersection between people, processes, and technologies. So we look at the way things are changing internally for your employees. So there's lots of ways to talk about social media and things. We've heard lots this morning about engagement and things on the customer side. We're going to focus primarily for the next session on how companies are interacting and changing both their technology and their culture internally to make their employees, or give their employees the ability to do their jobs better. Yvette and I are going to ask a series of questions from our esteemed panelists, so why don't we bring them in this morning?
Great.
Let's see.
So good. Why don't we have Chris come over?
Right, so if they're looking here, Susan, maybe you want to sit beside me.
Because we don't
go
want
left
people
or,
to be
we'll go left or right.
confused about which one is Susan.
We're going to try to organize here, like we're looking at this nice.
who I am.
Okay. So, as everyone's sitting, so to get things started, you're going to do better introductions to yourselves than I am, so let's try to do the Twitter-like introductions to each other. Why don't you take 1 or 2 minutes, tell us each who you are, where you work, and just a very quick introduction to what your solution is, and then we'll get into more details.
Wonderful. So my name's Susan Andrews, and I head up innovation for Citigroup, based in Palo Alto, California. And came to Citi 2 years ago from Apple, and with the objective of trying to make a dent in the universe and really transform an industry from the inside out.
Someone leaves Apple as an employee? I thought everyone goes to Apple. Okay.
Great run.
Okay, good.
Yes, hello, my name is Richard Boley. I'm a career U.S. diplomat, but I did cut my teeth in Silicon Valley working for the iconic PR firm Regis McKenna, helping to launch the first Macintosh, so back in the day. So I run the Office of E-Diplomacy. When you think of the State Department, you probably don't think of innovation, which makes our story all that much more surprising. We've created a whole suite of collaboration tools behind the firewall. None of them are cloud-based because we're probably hammered more than any other organization, or nearly any other organization. And we are an extremely risk-averse organization, which also makes it that much more surprising what we've achieved.
And I'm Tim McElroy with 3M. I'm part of our newly formed global e-transformation group. And what we really focus on is, even though we're going to talk a little bit about the internal aspect of it, but we really focus on the customer engagement and what we want to do across the platforms of technologies, and primarily using the Moxie software platform to help engage with those customers, as well as using that as a learning tool for the rest of the corporation to understand exactly how we can engage with our customers more effectively.
My name's Chris Salas, Guitar Center, been with them for 11 years. As a director of store labor, we implemented Ceridian's Dayforce application. And one of the key things we implemented first was with the scheduling, using demand-based scheduling. We have a lot of different departments in our stores, and the way our customers shop is pretty interesting because they're guitar players, they're drummers, they all record, so on and so forth. So, my job is to make that employee experience and customer experience come together, make sure everyone's in the place they need to be at the right time, both in our stores as a total staff, but in our department levels too. So it's been really interesting the past few years with the integration of the software.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, everybody. And as many of you may saw last night, Chris was one of our award winners in the future of work. One of the things I really liked about their application is they said they sign all their emails with "rock on." I think you don't really hear that from customers too often. Okay, so what we want to do during this panel, we're going to try to get some big theme ideas out there. I know I've spoken to lots of you that have come to this event to really hear from your peers, not specifically about their solutions, which we are going to work into these stories, but even on some bigger concepts. And so there's no bigger one going around these days than the conversation about, should everything be moved to the cloud, or are we going to be doing things on premises still? So I'd love to hear some of your feedbacks and thoughts, both from yourself and from your company, if maybe you might differ from your company's rules. So why don't each of you talk about that for a little bit?
Do you want to start?
I can jump in. I mean, cloud's just not an option for us yet. So we've done everything behind the firewall. We have done it all with open source software. So we use MediaWiki to build Diplopedia, 17,000 articles, 35,000 page views a week inside the entity, the organization. We've done over 100 multi-author blogs, kind of content with conversation using first movable type and now WordPress. We created our own kind of LinkedIn meets Twitter behind the firewall using BuddyPress, which is an extension of WordPress. We've got over 11,000 members. These are all people inside the State Department. We have an ideation platform, which we first built on using movable type and then went to, Spigot, but we went to another vendor. And we also do internal search. And finally, we're now developing kind of a stream filter and moderator, which is, kind of like Google Reader, meets net vibes. But we've developed all these ourselves. We got a couple of really great coders and an awesome team, which I would put toe to toe with any entrepreneur group in any organization in the world. So.
Nice. 3M is a pretty big company. I think most of you probably know us for our Post-it notes, but we do just some extraordinary things. And with that comes, 5 large business groups. We have 40 plus different divisions, business units within those. So we really need speed. And fortunately, we've been able to come to grips with the fact that this SaaS, this cloud effect exists. And so we're able to use that. And I think, again, from our experience with Moxie, we're able to do things very, very quickly. So when a business wants to turn around and start part of the knowledge base or maybe do some co-browse or chat, whatever it might be, because we're SaaS, we don't need the internal integration work. We can get it turned on within a matter of days for them. So I think speed for us is really critical, and then trying to replicate that throughout the other businesses. So we're definitely sold on the SaaS model.
All right, 1 on-premise, 1 cloud. Let's see how we go.
I guess we could go right down the middle because we have both, depending on what platforms it is. Obviously using Dayforce is cloud-based software as a service, but then we have other things where we just, also in the past year and a half with Red Prairie using their clienteling system. We started out as software as a service, but then we've taken that in-house for different reasons and probably just the need to fiddle too much with the what we want, the how we want. So we're like, all right, we're just gonna buy it. So we pulled that in-house. So I think it goes by application for us. As a lot of you know, Guitar Center is just the retail stores most likely, but our portfolio is pretty large. The fact that we also own music and arts, which are over 100 band and orchestra retailers around the country, but musiciansfriend.com, guitarcenter.com, Woodwind and Brasswind, Music 123, Harmony Central, those are all Guitar Center enterprise brands. So leaving certain things in the cloud allows us to reach those different parts of the enterprise a lot quicker than having to develop it in-house by these acquisitions that we've had over time that operate a lot differently and a little bit more reluctant to go to something that we've had because we developed it in-house. So we take it from application to application.
You're a tweener.
We are.
And Richard's going to put his build-it-yourself team up against, I guess, whoever you're doing. Okay.
That's fine. Hey, we'll take it.
Yep.
Come on.
Okay, so we've got 1-1-1, I guess. Here we go. We've got a tie going. So
Premise.
let's see.
Yeah.
On-premise, cloud loses.
Yeah,
Okay,
given
let's
the
see.
industry that we're in, we're definitely on premise. However, I have been in a couple conversations where we're starting to explore the cloud a little bit in certain areas and where we could potentially leverage the cloud. So it's good.
Well, we are definitely seeing more financial services, government organizations moving into the cloud. And in fact, we have SaaS-based solutions in our audience today who are opening divisions, who are focused on government and education. So you mentioned, in the business you're in the banking area, that of course you're on premise, but security, is it an issue any longer, really?
Yeah.
For you,
It is.
still is.
Yeah.
Well, and as I said, what we are seeing is a greater move in that area as companies overcome those concerns and recognize that perhaps SaaS solutions are potentially more hardened from the security perspective than on-premise.
Well, I should take it back. Maybe we're 90%, because we do have one cloud-based platform.
Starting to lean our way now.
Well, in full disclosure, and it actually really fits with the future of work. What we've developed is kind of a mechanical Turk for diplomacy. Okay. It's called the Virtual Student Foreign Service Microtasking Platform, where students around the U.S. can come onto a platform they fill in what their expertise and interests are. And then people on the other side, in embassies and consulates around the world, put projects that they have, put it up there, tag them for what they are. Those students then get an alert. They can jump in and instead of playing Angry Birds, can save the world.
Good.
Nice.
Well, interestingly, didn't the former CIO of the United States make a mandate that government
Cloud
all
first.
going to move
Cloud
to
first, right.
to the cloud? But so that was public, and all the SaaS vendors love to cite that report and things. But you're telling us that kind of hasn't really worked its way down to actual implementation.
He does work for Salesforce now, right?
He made Charlie. Is Vivek showing up today at any point in the time? Okay. All right. So no, but it was interesting. So we'll see.
So I'm curious with the projects that some of you have put in place to document the innovation platforms that you did at Citi. You've been leading some really interesting programs in the area of collaboration or social, however you want to call it. From the space that I work in, I focus in HCM, a lot of leaders are asking, how do we get there? How do we start? Right? We love the ideas, we love the way that you're able to start shifting cultures, but how do organizations start on these initiatives of introducing collaboration or social, changing their cultures?
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, whenever I do anything, we have to find internally a business that is going to be a thought leader in whatever we do. And if you find, this is so exciting, and first of all, I love the love fest that we have here, because everybody here gets this.
Yeah.
And we're not beating our head up against the wall all day long, so here I can actually relax a little bit and enjoy this. But what we do is we find that sponsorship. It's just like anything else that we do. We look for our influencers, right? So we just take that same premise, we throw it into one of our businesses, and then they start to espouse the benefits of what's occurring within that whole platform. And again, I'm focused on engagement with our customers. So there's a number of things that we have to do that has to permeate and how to teach others various competencies, how they're going to deal with the customers. I think somebody earlier at the breakfast symposium here talked about we're all customer service. Well, we are. And that's what we have to convey to everybody who is going to respond. So that's what we teach from an internal collaboration piece, is how do we interact with a customer like that every single day using these new tools. So again, I look for a business sponsor that helps to proliferate what we're trying to do.
Yep, and that's exactly what we did at Citi as well, and what we continue to do is we look for business sponsors, but we also have the top leaders supportive of what we're doing, which is super important. And it's not just saying, yes, I support it, but how do you drive engagement at the leadership level of an organization? And so with the global campaign that we launched, it was not necessarily about what are the ideas that will be generated as much as it was a demonstration that we could do it. We could drive engagement across the global organization. And in order for us to do that, we needed the leadership, and they were a little shy and reticent to get involved initially. And it really was grassroots, where you're calling them and you're saying, you have to log on, similar to what Linda was saying. You have to engage with your employees and have the conversation and give them permission to express themselves and tell them it's okay. And once the leaders engaged, our adoption rates went through the roof. People were engaged, they were talking at the C-level. It was really amazing to experience and watch.
What organization do you report into, Susan? What's your
I
structure?
report into O&T. Interestingly, I report, my boss is Debbie Hopkins, and she's the Chief Innovation Officer and Head of Venture Capital Initiatives, and we report into Don Callahan.
And so O&T, for those of us who don't know CityLink.
Operations and Technology.
Thank you.
Sorry, sorry.
I had something in training.
Yeah, sorry.
And Rich, you're IT.
Yeah, so I report up to the CIO.
Yeah.
And it really, frankly, it makes things easier, because oftentimes, IT is they're the biggest obstacle, because you say, I want these collaboration tools. And they go, well, we got SharePoint, go ahead.
Right.
And you're like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. So because we're on the inside, it's much easier for us to actually make these changes, implement them, and actually have technicians and technologists who can kind of make it happen. And the one thing I would say is essential is you can't do this on the cheap. No. You can't have, you need an office with the name and a place and people who work full-time on this. It can't be kind of part-time work for a lot of people because it'll never get the traction that it requires. You know, our office, and talk about leadership support, our office was set up by Secretary of State Colin Powell, and we are a leading implementer of Secretary Clinton's vision of 21st century statecraft. So without that leadership support, it would be very difficult.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, I'll just ask, just kind of related to this question about mobile. You know, to what extent have you enabled mobile for the solutions that you've deployed? You know, what role does that play? And is that also an IT or an HR initiative? I raise that because a colleague of mine, Charles Brett, who does mobile review, he recently published something, you know, who should own mobile in the organization? And I think your argument, Charles, was that it should not be IT. It should probably be HR or legal or any other combination of divisions. I'm just curious, what is the role of mobile in these kind of collaborative initiatives that you have going on, and who owns that decision?
So for us,
Okay.
for our ideation campaign, City is a BlackBerry shop, and coming from Apple, that's tough. But we do allow Apple devices on the network, and for us, we did launch the campaign with an application on the mobile device, on the BlackBerry, but it wasn't useful. The UX was awful. And it was.
Speak to Tom, he's just down here.
Oh, yeah.
Get that fixed for you.
It was really, really bad. And so we are considering doing something different there so that we can look at a slate or an iPad or some other larger device that allows us to interact and collaborate in a more effective way.
Okay.
As a Canadian, thank you for keeping the lights on at RIM. We appreciate
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, the State Department kept Wang computers on life support for 3 years.
Yeah.
We'll probably do the same for RIM.
Yeah.
With Guitar Center and using the Dayforce application with Ceridian, they have a really great mobile version of their site. The only reason we haven't implemented it yet is a technology. Well, it's twofold really. It's a technology barrier on our side because we utilize single sign-on, so our folks in the stores can use single username, single password. So we have to figure out the API build to be able to get in that for the mobile site for us. And then the other side of the coin is that labor law and just law in general and regulations are a lot further behind than technology is. So for all of our users to be able to be contacted via mobile phone, because the biggest chunk of our employee base is hourly non-exempt employees. It represents a big portion of who we are and what we do. So having those users being able to interact on their own mobile devices and their personal devices using their minutes and things like that is a big barrier that we struggle with HR and legal and things like that because there's not a big precedent for it. So for us to lead that charge and that risk is really high, which is unfortunate for all of us that play with it in beta in our sandboxes and have our users, because we love pilots. Guitar Center, we love pilots. We're really good at them, both from the financial sense, because everyone will let you play a little bit, because here's a little money and go play, and then we just go viral, because that's, Guitar Center is we're very young and very social, so as soon as that group of users start using it, they're going to push the envelope anyway, and we don't even have to sell it anymore. It sells itself, so we're excited to get into that, but that we're really struggling on that mobile side. Just can't get out of our own way.
Okay.
I think, from a 3M perspective, we're pretty much in the same boat, Chris. I mean, it's really, it's difficult to forge ahead because we have so many things that we want to do, and we have to pick and choose which one of those things that we are going to do. One of the good things in our group is that we're able to take a piece of that and go mobile with it. The knowledge base that we're using has a mobile UI as well. So we talk about that internal collaboration. We've just done this vast change at 3M now, where an entire area is nothing but what we call collaboration hubs. And we have, large display, you'll have mobile UI, you'll have all that. And that's where the knowledge base, where we can start talking about what we're doing, the new technologies that we're creating, the adjacent markets that we want to move into. That mobile UI is really where it's going to start to permeate throughout the company. But that's just a little experiment right now.
It's interesting. I was at a conference earlier in the year, and a panel of executives were talking about the need for mobile and how, of course, it's what you have to do, and it's mobile first, and that's all anybody's talking about. And someone posed the thought of, well, we seem to think that everybody wants mobile access, but do your employees really feel that? Is it put an added cultural pressure on them that they now always have to be checking. They always have to be connected. If you're the one that doesn't respond to the email, now that you have access, are you going to fall behind? And it's actually, a little counterintuitive that some people are actually thinking that, well, we did this great thing as IT. We enabled our people to have access 24/7 from anywhere. And then the HR people kind of turned around and said, well, that's kind of troublesome. What if someone gets promoted because they were willing to spend more hours online than somebody else because they had an Apple instead of a BlackBerry and the UI was better? So it's interesting that mobile first isn't always the answer to some executives. Just a cultural pressure that as we walk around with these things. So Chris, you brought up something a second ago, that one of the technology issues around some of these decisions was things like single sign-on. And that segues into a question that I wanted to ask that a lot of you have been speaking to me about and things like that lately is, in the 90s and the early 2000s, there was this concept of suites versus best of breed. And back then it was my email and my instant messaging package or my word processor and my spreadsheet. And now all of a sudden we're seeing this conversation come up again where it's, do I want to buy all of my social tools from a single vendor? So do I want to buy my blogs, my wikis, my activity streams, my HCM components, my customer satisfaction, my social media monitoring? Do I get them all from a suite? Or do I want to piece those together and do best of breed? And that conversation is something, like I said, we did 20 years ago, but each time we do it, there's newer technology and there's things that, the cloud makes this easier and standards make this easier. Well, I heard all those arguments 20 years ago. Hosting made it easier and Java was going to make it easier and things like that. I'd love to hear, probably like, we'll call it round robin number 2. We did cloud versus on-premise. I'd love to hear from each of you what your thoughts are versus suite versus building best of breed. Anyone?
I guess we can start. When we were talking about when we got Ceridian's Dayforce application, we piecemealed it in on pieces that we were sure that we needed right away, but we had investments in systems and resources in other areas. So we brought in the scheduling part of what they do and the period planning, and that's what we went after. But we already had investments in time and attendance somewhere else, in our HR system and our payroll systems and other places. But just recently, we've gone to adding in the time and attendance piece. And it's been beautiful the way the things work together, because now not only the way our employees are scheduled, but we marry that against how they're working and how they're punching and how their adherence to schedule, the whole thing. So even from a adherence level, an HR level, but also from a customer experience level, you can see it in real time without having to run separate reports or have 17 monitors so you can see it electronically or comparing the two. So I certainly vote suite based.
So user experience benefits from a suite base in your
absolutely both from the experience of being happy and comfortable and liking what it is, but also just speed. Less time our managers can sit in the office, and the more that they can get out and interact with the customers, the better we're all going to be, both from employees and customers standpoint. So,
okay. How about 3M?
Sweet.
Done.
Yeah. Why? What's the big driver?
Well, for us, we have to have global replication. And so what we're looking for is methods that we're going to be able to just use very quickly across the globe. Now, multi-language is a key to that. Obviously, we're not going to be able to use every tool. We're not going to get some things in China. We're not going to be able to get some things necessarily in Brazil, but for the most part, we're looking for a global enterprise functionality so that we can just go across the globe with it very, very quickly. And it doesn't take a lot of IT teams to actually go and do the work. So I have to side with Chris on that particular piece of it. And that's what
you had mentioned earlier. You use Moxie for your customer experience. So, okay, if they are one of your vendors of choice, and the next topic comes along that you want to implement, a blog or a wiki or something instead of customer experience, do you first try to go to them and see where they are in that? If it's something they don't have, are you more willing to work with them to see where it is on their roadmap?
Were you reading my mind?
You're
good.
It was the drinks at the bar.
Well,
so.
and I'll just, there's a really good example. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about our relationship with Moxie is they're not afraid to say, this is where we're at, but here's someone else who really partners well with what we're doing, and the API is easy, et cetera, and that's what they'll offer up to do. So to answer your question, Alan, we always go to them first. But for the vast majority of the time, they can help us out. But in those instances that they can't, we're going to go with them. We're going to work with them to get
Okay.
another provider.
So in an ideal situation, at the moment, we have Suite 2, Best of Breed 0. Oh,
Best of breed.
okay.
And
That's what we love. We love controversy.
That's why we love the government.
And part of it is a couple of things. One is, I mean, if you really want the extreme example is, would you take your car apart with a Swiss Army knife? Right. You want the best tool for the
And
best
duct
task.
tape. And duct
Right.
tape.
So
Bubble gum. I just call MacGyver whenever
Yeah,
my car has
exactly.
problems.
But the other is we've done this. We've been at it for 10 years. So and we have huge kind of change management challenges. I mean, we're a super risk-averse organization. I mean, think about it. When we communicate formally from an embassy to Washington, it's signed at the bottom by the ambassador. And when it goes from Washington to the embassy, it's signed at the bottom by Secretary Clinton. And then we throw up a wiki where the newest newbie can put something that anybody can read. I mean, that's revolutionary. So we could build on the success of Diplopedia, then to move to communities. We could build on the success of these blog-based communities to then launch out our kind of LinkedIn behind the firewall. We call it Corridor. And each of those build on each other, and then, but we build to suit our own needs. And we've got three huge different, widely different cultures. The majority of State Department employees, I mean, this is a great bar bet you can win, they're not US citizens. The majority of our employees are host country nationals in our embassies and consulates around the world. And they see their world as being in that little embassy or consulate. The diplomats change every 1, 2, or 3 years. So you got this very mobile group and this very sedentary group. So how do you kind of bridge across that? And we had to actually have a special community for those locally engaged employees, which took their worldview from seeing my counterparts being the half a dozen other professionals in the consulate or embassy to 12,000 or 30,000 people around the globe.
Interesting.
Sweet.
Sweet. All
Similar to 3M, just how do you scale across a global enterprise very quickly? And we look for integration, obviously, integration points. We use Spigot for our crowdsourcing ideation, and we're recently going with Jive. And we just signed with Jive, and we're looking at those integration points between what we can be doing with our ideation, and then how do we plug that into the Jive platform. So
I'd like to do a quick poll of the audience. There's been a lot of surveys out there on, is our suites really overtaking best of breed? Years ago it was best of breed. So given the choice, I'd like to see a show of hands of who would prefer a suite solution, recognizing that there may be some trade-offs. Perhaps you don't have the best functionality in every category versus working with integration, which some say is getting easier, some still argue it's not, but having the best tool for the best approach. So show of hands, who prefers suite over integration? Wow, so it looks like actually less than half. So let me see the other show of hands. Who prefers integration over suite? Interesting. So about half.
Like
and
everything
half.
else, 50-50.
There you go.
Well, 3-1 up here, 50-50 in the crowd. And there's other things we've talked about, the technology side of it, but we didn't get into things like the billing and licensing and vendor contracts to deal with. So there's all sorts of things we can talk about there. User experience was one of the things that came up for these things. Something that's I'm curious about. Whenever we talk about social, I hear this. I don't know, I won't say it's a misconception, I don't want to lead the audience, but I hear people talk about that if we implement these social tools, people are just going to be able to use them. It's just, they're there, they're available, everyone knows how to use them, they use them in their consumer lives. Is that true in practice inside your organizations as we move away, or I shouldn't say move away from, augment our existing tools like email and others with more social? What do you have to do as far as training and engagement, and how do you drive those adoption numbers and things?
We had to develop what we call our playbook. And the center of that playbook is really, it aligns with what the business objective is. I mean, everything that we do is driven by what the business wants, but primarily we had to actually define competencies, both behavioral competencies and functional competencies, in order to help people understand what that tool is and what it was about. Again, we understand that once we put something out there, it's out there. I mean, there's nothing else that we're going to be able to do, necessarily, unless we can pull a plug out of a wall somewhere to take it away. It's there. So we have to ensure that people truly grasp that whole process. One of the things that we've done within 3M and what I've carried with me for pretty much a lifetime is what we really try to do when we tell them what has to be done is you're really trying to make a difference one relationship at a time. That's what you're trying to do. And no matter how many influencers you have, no matter how many people are out there, they might take 500 chats a day or whatever the case may be. Every single one of those is what they're after. That one relationship at that given moment is what you're trying to do and work on.
Interesting.
And for us, it's what's the one thing we're trying to do. So there's a tendency that people would like to have 500 features launched on day one. And my feeling is that it should just be one feature. So as an example with Jive, when we deploy Jive, what's the one thing that we want our employees to do? We want them to set up a profile, right? So our focus is going to be initially on how do we drive adoption and how do we get our employees to set up a very rich profile on Jive that will allow them to connect in the future, and then we build from there.
So we're getting the wrap-up screen, please message, but what you've said is exactly the question I have to ask. We heard this morning about CXM, Customer Experience Management, and the idea of gathering as much information about the consumer so that you can have better insight, have a better relationship, using big data analytics to bring all this together. We're not hearing much about that conversation from the employee perspective. Why are organizations not focused on that one thing, which is know as much as possible about my employee, their relationships, their conversations, et cetera, so that I can make better decisions and open up new career opportunities and engage them and retain them and help them be more successful. I like that your focus, is on build that profile. So just really quickly going down the line, in the mindset of the CXM, do you see that coming from an EXM perspective in the next few years? Will your company, and do you see other companies starting to move in that direction?
Yeah, as far as Guitar Center is concerned, we're always really interested in what our employees are doing because 90% of us are musicians. So makes a very interesting kind of employee profile across your organization. And down at the retail level, at the frontline retail level, we have what we've branded microsites, but are very much your LinkedIn or Facebooks of the world. So if you go to guitarcenter.com, pick your favorite store, you'll notice on that store page you can go to the individual employees that work in that store. And once you get down to that level, you can find their likes, their dislikes, their photos, their audio, their video. Have they recorded tracks? What gear do they like? They can put together gear lists that link directly to our online retail site. And you can connect directly to the customer. But on the flip side of that, as managers are working with their employees to build those sites, the managers are learning a lot about their employees as well. And we offer some unique things too, like we have our own leave of absence called gig leave, that we actually encourage our employees, if they're working musicians, to leave us for a while and go travel, do 45 days out on your gig. We'll hold your benefits. And then we're happy to have you back and share your experiences, put them on your site so we can get more customers in. So our managers are learning about our employees more and more by doing that too. So the benefit is all around. It's 360 degrees from a company standpoint as well as our customers. So
terrific.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I think we do a good job of getting involved with our employees. So.
We have a thing at 3M where we can take 15% of our time to explore, new opportunities that may exist. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. So this is our definitely part of our future of work, is that we need to do a better job of it. I mean, gig leave would be great at 3M if we could do that. But the point is, we do have it in a sense, and we'll come up with a name. Chris and I will talk afterwards to do that. But it's really important that we allow others to do it outside of the laboratory. Yeah. And so we need to work on it better.
Okay, good.
I mean, our whole job, my office exists to kind of answer the challenge that Lou Platt, the former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, gave, which was if HP only knew what HP knows, they'd be 3 times more profitable. Yeah. We like to say if the State Department only knew what the State Department knows, we'd have world peace.
Yeah.
World peace
and
through
that's our
employee
job.
identification.
Yeah, it's a
Excellent.
big product.
Good. Well, and you've kind of given us your story already, so let me open it up to the audience. Questions that you guys would like to ask, follow up with these folks. Ben, at the end? So the question was, we talked about suite versus best of breed, but we didn't really focus on the platform, which is really more of an extendable, extensible solution. Are they the same thing? I have my opinion, but
Well, I did mention that maybe SharePoint isn't the answer. So.
all right. So again, from what we've seen in our research, there is a camp, who firmly believes that the platform is, kind of the best of both worlds. You're able to deliver a full suite of capabilities on a platform, but enable developers, customers, partners to extend and build solutions that are unique to their industry or region, et cetera. There are others who very firmly say, although that's a great play, the fact is we want more control. So I can't say, what's better, but they're definitely not the same. A suite is not necessarily the same as a platform. And it really depends, I think, on your
Extending Jive with Spigot, extending
Exactly.
Moxie
That's
with
right.
something. So, the standards to be able to do these things certainly are helpful, but yeah, it's a great topic for discussion.
topic. Other questions? All right. Well, I know
All
we've
right,
extended
we're getting
Got the hook.
We're getting the hook. Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone will be around for the day if you have any questions.
Thank you, guys.